No, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm here. This is Andrew Dean at Richard Wengel Architect. Yeah, sure. Mr. Chair, we applied for the Committee of Adjustment in March of 2020. And in the time since we applied, the owner, our client, has sold the property to a new owner. And he would like to proceed with the application, but he would also like to defer so he has an opportunity to meet and talk to his new neighbors about the project. At this point, he hasn't moved into the property, he hasn't really talked to them at all or explained what he'd like to do, so he'd like to meet and talk with them. No, it's not. Yeah, that's correct. He just took ownership a short while ago, just before the holidays. And so he would like to eventually proceed to the Committee of Adjustment, but at this point, he hasn't met his neighbors, and he thinks that it would be best to talk to them prior to his moving forward.
I think it's quite reasonable to do that. And I will move to grant the deferral with a deferral fee they have to pay. Oh, okay. Is this new this year? Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
I am, yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Okay. No, I mean, I think this is a good project because it provides additional housing and it's quite minor. So we feel it's an appropriate development and it meets the 4 tests.
Mr. Chair, I'll start. I think this is a fairly straightforward application, and as he says, it results in more rental accommodation. So I'm prepared to put a motion to approve. I don't believe there are any conditions.
I would second that, Mr. Chair.
I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Good morning. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This project is a proposal for a 3-unit dwelling. There are 2 units existing in the building already. There are 6 variances associated with this application, a few of which are tied to one another. So I sent a presentation document to the committee's attention, and that might be the most useful one to pull up as I walk through this, if that's possible. It's titled Committee Presentation on the website. But nonetheless, I can begin speaking to it. Yes, there it is there. So there are 6 variances. So what I've done with this particular document is I've listed each variance and tried to use some common language just to describe what the variances are and why it is that I think they're minor. So I'm going to run through most of them and focus on the variance that I believe the neighbor to the north, there is an objection letter, as you know, from 83 Clinton. So I would like to direct my attention to their concerns, and I'll do that towards the end of this presentation, but I'm just going to quickly walk through the variances as they're listed. The first of which is a pedestrian entrance to a secondary suite. This is a common variance, as the committee may know, and essentially you're not allowed a front entry for a secondary suite from the front of the house. But for this particular building, in order to get to the back, you have to walk all the way around one side of the house, across the back of the house, and then up the other side of the house to get to the existing access, which is inconvenient, and it doesn't work so well because you're interrupting 2 different tenants to get there. And so for this reason, that basement entry at the back is just not feasible or desirable. And given that it is a common variance, I'm just hoping that the committee will be able to see that as minor. The alterations are not terribly significant. We are maintaining the geometry of the existing building. On page 1 on figure 2, for instance, you'll see that the basement door is being located where there is an existing window. So there's no alteration to the wall per se. We're keeping the existing stone lintel and the bay window projection and the geometry of the line work. So I believe that that variance from the front is considered minor. The second variance, number 2, has to do with the floor area of the secondary suites. This is a curious restriction because it's not really possible to avoid it in this particular case, because the design of the suites is a function of the floor areas that they're located on. So we basically have a suite in the basement, a suite, a unit on the ground floor, and a unit on the second and third floors. And so in order to avoid that 45% requirement, we would have to alter the design in ways that just would not be feasible by counting some of the first floor towards the basement suite, etc. So again, the variance number 2 is not avoidable, and I believe it is considered minor. We're not really adding any significant space to the building per se. Variance number 3, again, is the which of the house? Well, no, Mr. Chair, there's only 2 dwellings now. So the condition that's existing is the building proper. And so when we design 3 units, the floor area of the interior floor area of each unit, rather, emerges to become more than 45% of the total dwelling unit. Yeah, yeah. No, sir. Yep. Okay, very good. So variance number 3, again, is somewhat tied to variance number 1, and essentially the variance means that when you're doing a secondary suite, you can't alter the look of the building from the street. This is a hard bylaw to comply with. It's almost inevitable if we're putting a front entry into the building that we will alter the look of the building from the front. But I believe that the attempts by the owner with this design to reconcile the geometry of the building, like you'll see, for instance, on figure 3, which is showing on the screen now, that the change to the roof involves essentially flattening out or creating a dormer on the 3rd floor. You'll see right now with the pitched roof and gable, the window is very small, and it actually doesn't meet the requirements for egress and ventilation. So the hope is that by just enlarging this dormer, that we can create a more habitable space on the 3rd floor. And you'll... Okay. Okay, sure. So that's variance number 3. I'll leave it at that. I'm hoping that the committee might have had a chance to browse through this document. So let me just run to the variance number 5 on page 3. This is the one I believe that is causing the neighbors to the north the most concern. And you're going to see an aerial line drawing there that indicates the extent of what would be a 3rd floor addition onto the building. Planning has submitted a report that they would request privacy screening on the north and south sides of the deck area, and the owners are fine with that. And I believe by doing so, we would then address any concerns they may have with overlook or view. And lastly, the major concern that they had was to do with light and shadow. If you look at this drawing, 83 Clinton is to the north, so it's the house just to the right, if you will, on this drawing. We're only really looking at impacts with sun and shadow to their 3rd floor deck and yard, for instance, in the winter months. Just based upon how far back that 3rd floor goes, like we're not taking this 3rd floor out to the extent of the entire house. It is cognizant of the adjacent decks and 3rd floor additions. So I believe for these reasons, this particular variance could be considered as minor. One last very quick point. There's also a variance for building depth, which refers to the overall length or depth of the building. And on the notice, there's an indication that it's a 2-story back addition, but in fact, it's a 2nd floor addition. The building depth is actually an existing condition, which is triggered by the addition of a 2nd floor on top of the single floor addition at the back. And so for this reason, We're not adding to the depth. We're just simply putting a small second floor addition on top of what is already there. And so I'll leave it at, I can leave it there, committee, recognizing that my time is coming to a close, and I'll entertain any questions or comments that you or the neighbors may have. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. When you mentioned to the front elevation, when you mentioned that the reason to increase to build up on the first floor is also to meet the egress requirement. I don't get that. I don't understand that part.
Oh no, it's not the egress; it's the ventilation. So
and I don't understand that either. Yeah. Why is it affecting the ventilation?
Well, because it's so small, and so it's a code requirement that also comes with requirements for daylight. And essentially, it's a desire that the owners have to make the suite more habitable. The window is very small right now. It's a very narrow. If you look at the front elevation, it's a narrow loft window. So by making the dormer and the opening larger, we're bringing more daylight and ventilation into the space. So they did not create an addition for the full width of the building.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that, but I'm not too sure that is the reason, because you can actually enlarge the window without having to bring up the whole wall. And I think the main reason is to really increase the usable floor space.
That's correct. That's another reason. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we are. We are 83 Clinton, immediately to the north. Yeah, Ali Ranama. And we outlined our concerns to the committee in our letter submission. The major concern that we have is in fact the third floor, and I think I understand the perspective with the aerial view, but we know what we see from our window. That third floor is our bedroom and my wife's home office. And happy to submit further an image or video, whatever would be helpful. But from our perspective, it's pretty clear. If the perspective to the east from our window is 180 degrees, we would lose upwards of about 50 to 60 degrees with a massive wall blocking to the same height as our roof line. So it's not lower, it's not further set back. Already that house is, the 81 Clinton house is a deeper footprint into the lot than ours is. So there's already a sort of barrier there. So by the addition as they have proposed, and we've tried to visualize this with the new owner as well, it's clearly at the very least a kind of 50 degrees of that 180 would be blocked, which would mean in the winter we have no direct sunlight into that room anymore, which today we have. And as on an aesthetic perspective, we lose our view of the downtown skyline completely in that blocked area, which is again about 45 to 50 degrees of the sight line. So that's our biggest concern, is loss of direct sunlight, more building shadow on our whole building and into our backyard, as well as kind of feeling more boxed in than we currently are. Again, it's a significantly larger house than ours as it is, which is fine. But expanding that means that we live next to a building instead of a home.
the moment, they have a third floor walkout and a deck. The owners had contemplated something like that. Oh, okay, sure. So the owners on 83, we appreciate their concerns, and we've thought about that as we've designed this third floor addition. So the owners at 83 have something very similar to what we're proposing. If you look on the aerial photo that's up there right now. In fact, if we did something exactly similar, the issues with privacy would probably be more exacerbated because we're looking right beside each other from our decks. So I believe by design, the creation of these altered setbacks, very much like what we have on the street, it's a very mixed number of setbacks, both from the front. And my sense is, or my opinion rather, is that by doing this, by coming out, we're actually creating a little bit more privacy in terms of overlook and awareness of people sitting beside each other on their decks. So this proposal is very much akin to what we see in the greater area with this idea of third floor dormer walkout and deck. The only difference being is that we're coming a little bit further back than the neighbor. But I believe that by doing that, we are actually creating more privacy than we would if we did the same thing that they did, if you'll see, which they have a third. If we were back as far as they were, I believe the privacy might be more of a problem that we have now. And so I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that. I believe that what we're showing here is in keeping with the gentle density that the city is looking for in the official plan. And the, yes, sir. Yeah. Well, the light issue I attempted to address in my presentation, that by bringing back, like we've seen additions like this done before where the design takes the addition all the way out to the back of the house, and the owners had contemplated this. So we're only coming out about halfway onto the roof. So this isometric line drawing that we're looking at is not cheated in any way. If you look at the scale drawings and the elevations, you'll see that there's a very distinct setback from the rear wall of the house with this third floor addition. It's only coming out 16 feet from the roof. There is no height variance associated with this application. So that should be of note. There are no height variances associated with the application. This is essentially triggered based on a GFA variance, which is at 0.87 times the lot instead of 0.69. And 0.87 is a relatively small FSI compared to what we've seen in the neighborhood in the greater region beyond. And so there are no height variances. It's basically a GFA. And I believe that the sunlight conditions are only really going to be an impact during the winter equinox based on sun angles. So as for the view, I don't know what to say about that. There's nothing that we can do. You know, the view, some of the view will be cut off. That is inevitable, but I believe that the design is cognizant of that by having brought back the third floor wall the way that it is.
Yeah, Mr. Boone, I was just wondering, have you had a conversation with the neighbor and attempted to come to something, some resolution in terms of the depth of the third floor addition instead of the way it is right now, to reduce it by a certain degree so that it would be something that the neighbor could live with?
The owner has had a conversation with the neighbor recently, but I believe they reached an impasse. I don't know that the owner wants to bring this back wall addition back any further. It's already quite small, as you'll see on the drawings, and so the attempt has already been made by design to bring this wall back to an appropriate place so that the impacts are relatively minor. But yes, the answer to your question is that the owner has spoken with the neighbors recently about the work. And we have had correspondence with planning, who have issued a report without concerns, save for the inclusion of some privacy screening on the north and south sides, and the owners are fine with that.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have one question. For the front elevation, when you take down the dormer and build it up, what material is that what you use?
I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
cutting out.
Oh, okay. At the front, where you rebuild the front, right? And what material you're using? Are you using a new material or just existing brick to match the existing brick?
The existing brick of the house will be maintained. The front dormer, if you look in there, you'll see a treatment of gray. That will be done with something similar to a panel type system to distinguish the dormer from the massing of the house. So the box dormer itself on the 3rd floor and for a portion of the 2nd floor will be done with a panel type cladding in gray as a contrast to the brick.
Oh, so it will be changed, right? The material. Okay.
Just the dormer, yes.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I like to express some of my thinking. I think all the variances are okay. I'm okay with them except the number 3, which is you're not supposed to change the front elevations if you're adding secondary suite. And I just thought that to me, it is such a big change, and then it's actually at the moment they're already building a walkout. That's a big change, but they also sort of like change the nice Victorian look of the front, and I'm not okay with that one actually. But having said that, I think the proposal is reasonable. Yes. But this is only my thought. I just wish they will be more respectful to the existing elevation, front elevation. No, it's relatively a small apartment. They do have, they do open a lot of windows at the back and not on the side. I'm not too sure they need to do that. There's an existing window already. They can enlarge the window. I'm just more bothered by eliminating the pitch roof, which is quite consistent with this kind of house. Yes.
I'll weigh in a little bit. I'm sympathetic to that view. It is a very pretty front facade, but I did go up and down the street, and while there are many houses that have that similar kind of peak, there are also houses that appear to have made modifications to the front as well. I'm generally fine with this. I was noting that the proponent acknowledged that there is no height variance required. I thought the variances being requested were fairly modest. I did also note that we often struggle on this committee with requests for basement entrances, in part because it's prohibited. But we do allow them in situations where it seems appropriate. And similarly, along the street, there appear to be a number of homes that already have basement entrances on the front. So for that reason, I'm fairly comfortable with this application, and I'd be prepared to support it. Sure. I'll make a motion, Chair, to approve this application. I do note that there is a planning staff condition in respect of screening for the third-story balcony. It sounds like the applicant is comfortable with that. So I will make a motion to approve this application subject to planning staff condition on screening.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, just for the front elevation part, I would dissent. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we will both speak. The house to the south at 22 Beaufort was almost identical to our house when it was constructed in 1927. In 2010, they received approval to construct a 20 by 20 addition at the back and expand the roof line. It should be noted their house has a similar elevation from the street and also has a driveway very similar and in width to our driveway. We have used their addition as a guide to the addition we are proposing. We were surprised by the objection from the neighbors at number 26 Beaufort, given that their house was substantially expanded in 2001. Their lot size is very similar to the size of 24 and 22 Beaufort. And all three houses will have similar floor space index. Our reno, if our reno is approved, their home is presently deeper than ours. Their rear wall is 11 feet deeper today than ours. Our addition will only be 25.11 or 14.
Our addition would only exceed their existing rear wall by up to 16 feet, which isn't large in this neighborhood. Our addition that we propose, we've used the number 22, what they have built, we've used it as our guide. Our instructions to our contractor was that whatever we do, we have to be consistent with what has been done at number 22 and what has been done at number 26 in terms of floor space index. Our houses at number 22 and number 24 were built in 1927. Currently, our house is substantially unchanged. We would just like to update it and upgrade it and make it a size that we can continue to age in here as we're getting older, and we can have people come in and help us when we get older so we don't have to relocate. We've been here for 30 years. We love our neighborhood and we like our street and we want to stay, but we'd like to stay with a house that works for us. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me? My first question is, will you be hearing from the opposition party? Oh, that's not correct. I was asked in the email if I was opposed, supported, or did have concerns. Based on the presentation, I no longer have any concerns. I'll just stand by and listen to the opposition. Okay, will you be presenting the opposition's point of views? Okay. Okay, thank you. Just one final question. You indicated at the beginning I can email for a copy of the proceedings today. What is the email that I would email to? Okay, and that case manager's name was in the email that I received for the meeting today? Are you able to tell me the name of the case manager? Would that be possible? Okay, thank you very much.
I have one question. It's only to clarify variant number 2. I do not understand it very well. It's about the stair having exceeding the proportion of the horizontal and vertical dimension. Not quite.
We could not understand what she was saying. We did not hear her.
At the back of the house. I can't speak to that. There's going to be stairs from our back door down to the ground. They are what they are.
Hello?
Oh, I just do not understand variance number 2 very well. Do you? Does anyone understand that? It's not. Yeah.
Sorry, we don't really understand that exception for the height of the rear stairs. We've got an addition going on, and it'll have stairs from the addition down to the yard, and whatever they are, they are. So a length of we can change the stairs, like it's not, we just want stairs out of the back of the house into our yard.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I understand, but I'm just surprised there will be a bylaw governing that. That's all. It's not, I don't have any problem with it. Just try to confirm my understanding. Okay.
Mr. Chair, sorry, it's Paul Rinkoff again. I know I concluded my time, but a quick question. If this is a public hearing, could I just ask why it would not be appropriate to share the opposition letter in public? That's my question. Okay, fair enough. I wasn't aware the opposition letter was posted publicly. I will find that myself. Thank you.
Chair, just a couple observations. I did read the letter of opposition. It was quite fulsome and understand the issues being raised. Having said that, I do note that there isn't a variance for depth, so it's within the footprint for depth. It isn't a variance for height. I thought the 4 variances being requested were comparatively minor. I was convinced by the applicant's position that the house isn't really extending any further than the neighbor adjacent. And this is a neighborhood which appears to be ripe for these kinds of additions on homes, large lots, large frontages. So my view is that this is a reasonable application, and frankly, I'd support it. I'm happy to make a motion unless my colleagues like to. I'll move approval of this application. I believe there's an urban forestry condition on this one,
Yes.
number 2.
Yeah.
So I'll move approval with subject to urban forestry condition number 2.
And I will second that. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yes, just to make the committee aware that this project is removing the front porch area, which is in some disrepair, and creating a new floor space to add to the house. The increase to the house is 11 square meters only. We will be not going past the front wall of the neighbor to the south. And I believe this proposed addition is in keeping with the neighborhood and meets criteria for a minor variance. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
I do have one question. It's just to clarify your data. The variance number 1, the depth of the building. If you look at your site plan, can you put the site plan up, please? Could the site plan, yeah. The further down with the data, yes, here, with the data. Move it down. With the chart, yes. You know, the building depth there, you indicate it's 22.4. That's on the proposed one. On the building depth is 22.4 meter. Yes, but in the what written up variance is mentioned is 19.64. I just want to know which one is correct.
Yeah, so
Quite a big difference there, right?
yes, to address that, yeah, there was a correction made by consulting with a zoning planner. It was my interpretation being not quite correct. The one that length variance for on the notice is the correct one to be approved.
In the notice, but then is it indicate that number? Is it indicate on any of your drawings? 19.64. That's why I do not know whether the drawing reflects that what the changes or the
The change is just in the fact that the part of the house that I thought would be in length is not.
Okay, so the drawings are correct. If we go with those dimensions, you will come up to the 19.64, right?
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, it's an interpretation. Nothing changes in the house length other than adding the front porch to it.
I'm just
was my-
concerned, yes, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm just
my-
concerned that it is a big discrepancy, and then the drawings do not reflect what the number is. That's all.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose a motion that we accept approval of this application. It seems to be quite minor in request.
It's a forestry condition. There's a forestry condition.
And it is a planning, forestry, and parking. I think there are comments from each of those areas.
And sorry. There's also a staff report recommending that put the conditions on about the setback can only apply to the front porch, and also it's also limited to 1 story. That is the on the planning report. That's it. You like to put that in, and then I will second it.
And forestry.
Yes. Yes, with those 2 conditions.
Yes, I am. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes. Good morning. I'll just quickly go through the history of this project. The residential new construction building permits were issued a few years ago, and the owner is in the process of constructing the building. He realized last year that Augusta Avenue being a mixed commercial residential street, that it would be beneficial to use his ground floor as a commercial space. Hence, the building was under construction, and we in tandem decided to pursue minor variances to permit an eating establishment on the ground floor. The basement use is just ancillary prep space, which I understand is one of our minor variances. And the patio associated with this eating establishment is actually, since you have the site plan up, the building to the north at 305 Augusta. I was before you a year and a half ago to get permission for the outdoor patio at the rear of that building. Just some context, if you haven't been to the site or been to the next door site, both the 305 patio and the proposed patio for 307 and 305 are fully enclosed by brick buildings on all three sides. Hence, we didn't have any objections from neighbors when we applied for the 307 patio approval. This patio is slightly smaller than the one that was approved by Committee of Adjustments previously. So essentially, we're trying to propose the same 30-seat heating establishment with associated patio as next door. The other minor variance items that we are requesting, the ground floor height for a commercial space is required to be 4.5 meters, which is, I was surprised that a minimum height of 4.5 was requested. Obviously, the building was constructed with a lower first floor story, but to meet the development standards for height, we did need a minor variance for a lower ground floor height. The heritage report is actually in support of this because as anyone who knows Augusta Avenue and Kensington Market, it's very untypical to see 4.5 meter ground floor heights. I think that's a product of the citywide zoning bylaw being generally applied to all neighborhoods. And the only other, we have a parking variance, but this property does not have any opportunity to provide parking. So there was nothing that we could do about providing that parking space. I just want to give some quick context. The pre-circulation process, we took advantage of that, had meetings with city planning. They requested that we remove 2 minor variances from the original zoning notice. And we complied, we made the revisions, a new set of plans and a new zoning notice were uploaded on November 19th. And there's also correspondence with city planning confirming that they had no further concerns about the application. And that was actually updated to the AIC as well. So the planning staff report, I was expecting would just have the typical conditions for an outdoor patio, which we accept, and which were obviously accepted for the neighboring patio. But they did express concerns last minute, this was received last week, about the size of the patio. I feel that given the context and being next door to a patio that's technically larger than the one that we're asking for, and the actual condition of it being fully bound by brick buildings on all sides, will absolutely mitigate any sound escaping the patio, and which is why there are no objections from neighbors or any concerned parties about this patio approval. So I would ask that the committee consider granting us that minor variance for patio size in light of the last minute planning request. But obviously we do not want to jeopardize the entire application. So would defer to committee on that item.
I have no question. If there aren't any other question from our members, I'd like to move for approval. The reason is that actually I live in the neighborhood quite a few minutes away, and it's a very vibrant area and very similar development changes have been taking place. A lot of these, most of these houses are turned into little restaurants and cafe, and I think that this is in keeping with the neighborhood and with the kind of activities that it will have, and I'm in support of that. And also, I move a motion to approve with the planning staff recommendation of the limits. There were 3 conditions on the planning staff on the planning report.
Yeah, I thought, Yim, you were going to move approval of all the variances without the conditions. did read, obviously, and as the applicant has read the staff report, do note that the Kensington Market Restaurant and Bar Study was only adopted in November of 19, which may actually show why some of those other patios are larger, in part because they were probably brought in before that study and its requirements were finalized. So, you know, given that the city has done a fairly extensive review of Kensington and the bars and restaurants, and this is the requirement that they have come up with, I think we should adhere to city staff's recommendations with respect to the refusal of variance and imposing of the conditions. So if you're moving, I would second your motion, Ian.
Yes. That's my motion. I will approve the variances only with the planning staff conditions of operation.
Well, hold on.
Because-
So variance one is a variance to the patio size, right? So I think we're refusing variance one.
Oh, that's not what I mean. Only because, Larry, the site is such that if you reduce it, what you're going to do with that little bit is all enclosed, all sides by brick walls. And that's why they just naturally use the whole thing as a patio. I just thought that in this case, if it's site specific, that it doesn't make sense to reduce it a little bit, because then the patio is still there and the space is there already.
Okay, well, yeah, I take your point, but I'll come back to my other point about, you know, a fairly comprehensive review by the city, who have put in, you know, guidelines and restrictions in terms of patio size, and staff is recommending on this pretty fresh review and report that we refuse that. So I'll retract my seconding of your motion, because I think in this instance, notwithstanding, I take your point, and it's a vibrant area, and we want to support reasonable business ventures in this area. But I am sympathetic to a fairly comprehensive review by the city that has come up with these kinds of restrictions, and I didn't hear a particularly compelling case as to why this application is unique enough that it would require an exemption to that provision. So I don't know how we do this, but if we want to, I'll remove my seconding of your motion, and I guess we can vote on that if it gets seconded.
Sorry, I apologize. I'd like to support Mr. Clay's position. I think that variance number one, in keeping with the planning department's recommendation, that is the one that we should not be accepting. Keep it as it's supposed to be at, I believe it's 30. So yeah, I can't support that, the motion as it stands.
Can I add my experience to this? Because Larry, I do agree with what you say. I do have sympathy for that, but I have been using this cafe quite a lot, and especially the 305. When you're sitting there, there's all brick walls around you, and there's like a natural size of that. That's the patio. And you don't, it's for this size, if you sit there, it doesn't make sense that you will have part of it as a patio and part of it is just blank walls. I do not know, I understand the report and all that stuff, but it's still in Kensington Market, there are all existing conditions that is very hard to meet the vision of the report in a way.
No, that's a good point. Can I, Chair, can I make a suggestion? Can we just go out of committee and maybe bring the applicant back in again? I wouldn't mind hearing the applicant's perspective on Yim's point about viability. I mean, I get that there are blank walls, but I'm interested into why this application is so unique that we would not consider what the requirement from the city's report might be. Is that a fair approach?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to chime in. I'm also a frequent, I go to the patio next door. Yin is absolutely correct that it's a very unique site in Kensington Market. It's known as an oasis in Kensington Market because it is completely blocked off from the rest of the surrounding properties. I do agree that just arbitrarily, drawing a line at 30 square meters in that rear patio is not very practical. I mean, to be fair, the patio next door has planters at the back, like there are trees growing at the back. So the actual, occupied space for tables is less than what was previously approved. And this is just a testament to the owner and Kensington Market. This is not a patio that's going to be rammed corner to corner with seats. There will be planters, there will be other, things to make it a beautiful space just as next door. So while the number maybe that we're requesting is higher than 30 square meters, I do believe that the actual practical space that's available for seating is actually closer to 30 square meters. You can see in the site plan that there is an existing walkout stair. We're obviously not going to be able to occupy the area from the door to the end of the walkout stair for patrons. And I'm very sympathetic. I was working with city planning staff on the heritage planning study. I'm doing several projects in Kensington Market, and do understand that this being a fresh study, the apprehension to approve this, the application because of COVID was really long, and I mean, obviously, if we had been before you before this was officially put into law, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think I would like to believe that the committee would look at every site-specific instance, and as with Yim's perspective, understand that it's not a practical solution to just have a fence, I guess, drawing a 30 square meter limit to this patio. And obviously any future applications that try to reference this approval will also be reviewed on a site-specific basis. And if the context of that future application is detrimental, for approving a larger patio, I would, expect that they would be reviewed based on their circumstances. Yes. That's a good question, and obviously, if the committee were to refuse minor variance 1, we would obviously still accept the committee's verdict, and I would have to work with the owner. The owner is actually the same owner as next door, through 7 Augusta. He's opening a new concept, kind of sister cafe to Cafe Paminar next door. It would just be unfortunate that he has approved patio on one side for the full backyard, which is what makes that patio special, and to be limited on this side. We would obviously have to work with permanent planters to get the area down. But at this point, I would prefer to have the flexibility to allow him to furnish and green that space however he pleases.
Chair,
yes, it does have implications on the future, liquor license extension, to be approved for a certain area. The AGCO will come back to the Toronto Buildings approval. And so while I think going from 54 down to 30 is almost half. So I do think it will be challenging to occupy slightly less than half of that whole backyard space as permanent planters. I think, realistically, we could probably get it down to maybe 40 square meters, 45 square meters. But I think getting it down to 30 would pretty much cut the usable space in half.
Chair, I wonder if I could suggest maybe a compromise. In the past, when we've heard these kinds of applications, we have approved but put a time limit on it and allowed for a period of time for if there are any concerns, complaints, issues, that those could be brought forward. And if there are not, then we would make that permanent. And I wonder, as a compromise, maybe as an adjunct to Ian's motion, that we could, for example, approve the variance, but subject to a 2-year period or something like that, within which, if there were any concerns, complaints, issues that were to arise, then that approval would be revisited. I don't know what the mechanics of that might be, but I think we've done similar things like that in the past, and maybe that's a reasonable alternative. I am, again, sympathetic, and I think we all agree that Kensington's a pretty vibrant area, and it is a host of a lot of different types of entertainment venues, and we need to support that. And if this is a requirement for the viability of that operation and is consistent with others in that area, I think maybe as a compromise we might want to consider a temporary approval and allow it to proceed subject to a time period that would allow for any kind of concerns, complaints to be brought forward. Is that something that we could do?
We have done that before, Larry. Yeah, I think we have done that to some restaurants that in the design districts that give them like 2 or 3 years or sometimes 1 year expiring date. But due to the COVID now, I think the minimum they should have 2 years, because we do not know whether they can be open this summer. Right. 2
Chair,
years.
I just Chair, through you, is that something that we could consider? Fair enough.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of concerns. One is, the city's increasingly becoming built upon, and so any green space, and however minimal this green space might be, or the space that's not paved over or covered over. So I have a concern about the idea of going from a 30 to 50 a square meter area of a patio, and therefore eliminating 20 square meters that could potentially be used for planters. Plants are important in our city, and Kensington is no exception. The question of putting a time limit on potential concerns arising. Well, on the one side, you've got the owner who currently wants this variance. He owns the other side. Am I going to see any concerns arising from that owner? Very unlikely. At the other side, there's a wall. So I'm not sure where any concerns might arise that might then lead us to say, well, you've got to reduce the size of the patio. So I do have some concerns there.
If I may, I've just been actually texting with the owner about these negotiations. I've done several patio applications where a time limit was requested from city planning. Obviously, the time and the cost of coming to Committee of Adjustment again in such short period, 2 years, it is really difficult for small business establishment restaurant owners. Would the committee be open to entertaining we would choose 30 square meters over a conditional term. The owner went to Committee of Adjustments for 307 Augusta. We went through a long process to be before you today for this one. I agree with Tahir's point about we have not had any concerns next door, which was approved for 61 square meters. This adjacent patio, I bring this up again, is fully bound on all sides, and I expect there will be no concerns from neighbors, whether it's 30 square meters or 52. But a conditional term is something that the owner has given me his feedback that he would consider a 5-year term for the full patio, but a 2-year term, essentially I would be starting the whole process again, next year. And with, it's a difficult time. Patio space is so valuable for businesses this coming summer. And essentially this patio essentially will make or break this business before it even opens if COVID, continues on and indoor dining continues to be closed. So the additional 22 square meters that we're asking for really does go a long way for this business. And if the committee will look at this as a site-specific approval, there were no objections from neighbors, no objections at 307 next door either. The conditional term, I don't believe would come to any conclusions other than having to require an extra $10,000 on the owner's behalf to have to go through this process again.
Yes, Richard, I also just want to remind that the planning staff do not object to the variance number 1. They only want to put on conditions of the operation. So I think that if you're in the you've been to the site, you will understand that it's sort of a natural existing space, and I think maybe the size. If the size is the size limits, it probably apply to new patios on the front. Maybe I'm just thinking this is a way you need such conditions that just to help the business and the area. I think it's just appropriate application.
So just for clarification, Yim, you said that city staff isn't concerned about variance 1. I'm reading the staff; they're recommending refusal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. No, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but yeah.
No, this has been an excellent conversation. I want to appreciate my colleagues, thank them for the input. I will tell you that I think I have changed my view. I am now a little more sympathetic to the circumstance. I understand it a little bit better. Can I just ask the applicant, what's the materials for the patio?
It'll be pavers, obviously with plantings around the perimeter. And if you've been to 307, they have beautiful ivy growing on the existing brick walls that enclose all three sides.
Can I, Zahir makes the point about, paving over, and we're very concerned as a committee about, losing and having the impact on rainwater. Would you consider permeable pavers if you're going to do pavers anyways?
Yes, absolutely. I can reassure you, if you knew the business and the owners, that this will be a very green space.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then I'm prepared to second Jim's motion. If we could, that'd be great.
Sorry, yes, I'm okay with that. Yeah, but we still impose this operation restrictions, the hours and the music.
Yes, we accept those standard conditions for operating.
Yes, I think that's fine. No, I think I'm convinced that while might have been a compromise in some situations, may not work in this one.
Abstain. I'm abstaining.
Good afternoon. I'm on the line. Can you hear me? Oh, good morning. Thank you. I believe this application is minor and meets the 4 tests. I'm happy to make a presentation if you feel that's appropriate. Otherwise, I can answer any questions you have.
Just one question on variance number 6. Oh, yes. Oh no, sorry, number 5. Is the floor of the basement level with the sidewalk?
Yeah, within a few inches. It is level with the sidewalk.
Oh, okay. And is it already been built?
Yeah, this is an existing dwelling unit. If you're standing on the sidewalk now and you were to look at it, they built a retaining wall. I honestly don't understand why they did it, but in any case, there's a retaining wall there that brought the level of grade up to roughly halfway between the basement and the ground floor. So it's simply a matter of removing this pile of dirt that's been put in front of the existing building and putting a door so you can have a direct access to the basement dwelling unit. I'm just trying to create good quality housing in the sort of missing middle zone.
Yeah, I just try to understand your plan because it doesn't seem to have a way to get into that space. But I just assume that it's a level of the sidewalk. You don't need any steps going into your
Yeah,
basement.
there shouldn't need to be a step at all.
Okay.
It's probably a little clearer on drawing A2, but essentially, yeah, if you just imagine the basement is level with the sidewalk and somebody probably 50 years ago built retaining walls and put a pile of dirt in front of it. That's basically what's going on there.
Are we in committee? Yeah, I just want to mention the planning staff planning report suggesting to have some landscape screening, 1.5 meter high, and the front, and also permeable paving for the front yard.
So yeah, I did speak with planning staff. The existing condition is 0 landscaping, and we did agree that it would be difficult to include that landscaping component on the subject property. However, if you look at the site plan, you will see we are proposing a planter with a screen. Visually, it's the same. You can't see the property line. At the edge of the sidewalk, we will plant it, which is desirable for all parties. I think it improves the basement unit and the streetscape. So we did incorporate that and the permeable pavers.
In the app, if no one else, I'm happy to. Sorry, Yim, did you want to make a motion? Jim? Again,
I can't hear.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve this application. I don't think there are any conditions.
No. Oh, sorry.
I would second that, Mr. Chair.
Larry. Oh, okay. Larry, there were some conditions recommended by the planning report, which is the permeable paving in the front, and also it's 1.5 soft landscape fence. Do you want to put that as conditions?
I don't see that.
I'm not sure where you're seeing that. I've missed that too. Maybe you could, someone point that out to us. Oh, I think I got to the first line where someone said they don't have any comment on this, and I didn't read the rest of it. So can we just confirm what the planning conditions are then? Oh, is this a planter in front and a 1.5 meter height for screening? Is that what you're talking about, Yim?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, yes. I read the whole thing, right?
Yeah, so I guess the conditions would be a planter in the front, 1.5 meter for the soft landscaping screening, and permeable paving in the front yard.
Mr. Chair, I read this a little differently in the sense that it's not a recommendation. The second bullet says if possible, and the first bullet says if possible, and the second says I would still encourage. So I'm not sure that these are to be read as recommendations or requirements.
But can I add? Yeah, they usually give recommendation, sometimes conditions, but we can make up our own mind to whether put that as a condition. So I'm just asking Larry with his motion whether he will put that as a condition.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's keep those conditions in.
I will second Larry's motion.
Thank you very much.
Pam, can you hear me? Oh, good. Great. Yes, very briefly, background of this application. The owners have now lived in their home for the past 9 years, and they do now require additional living space. I should say that they've talked extensively with all the surrounding neighbors, and the important part there is the two immediate neighbors on each side are both very, very supportive of what's being proposed. In terms of the size of the FSI, it's I think very much in keeping with the neighborhood for sure. In fact, there was an application approved by the committee in December for number 38 Ridge, and that was actually 0.86. So my feeling is that this is very, very much in keeping with the scale and the size of the home, and importantly too, the neighbors are supportive. Yeah, it's a bit, it's basically, it's just covering a different, the zoning examiner basically having a parking space not located behind the front wall of the house. And this covers the whole situation of different scenarios. And under the old City of Toronto bylaw, it's basically the status quo, honestly, of what's there now. So the parking space really is changing, is the front yard parking. And also we did, yeah, there's a, and there's, we did talk with Transportation Services a few months ago, and just went through this, and they didn't have any objections with that. And the actual parking space width, I did include a little sketch just showing it's really just a notch at the corner that, in terms of the actual size. So, so that covers, if you see the sizes, that's the drawing there. And if I'd sent another clarification on that too, just showing this, it's just a little notch at the 1 foot notch at the back, and otherwise it is 2.9 meters, which is the bylaw.
Yeah, so variance number 4 is still valid, or do we need to delete it? Or
well, they're all, she's put, basically the bylaw states that you'd it's 0 parking spaces, because a parking space is defined as a space that's located behind the front wall of the house. So that's really what,
oh,
the same situation is what really exists.
oh,
It's almost status quo is what's there now. It is.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's you still need that variance.
Oh yes, I think I definitely with the plans examiner. Yeah.
Okay.
They're basically all to do with the same thing though. So I do feel it's very reasonable, and even the actual space is the 2.4 meter width is only for 1 foot. The rest of it's all 2.9 meters, and adhering to the bylaw.
Sorry, Ian, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose that we adopt this proposal, accept it as it is. I don't see any major issues with anything in terms of the variances required.
I don't need a presentation.
No.
Hello, sorry. I have a technician here who tried to connect me to the microphone. We couldn't manage it. So can you hear me now? Okay, so what is the question? No, I don't. I mean, this is the existing semi-detached built in 53. It was really not renovated probably since it was built. It was tenanted, it's ruined, and the owner would like to renovate it. And at the same time, they want to replace the existing one-story addition at the rear of the house, which was probably built on the previous deck. It doesn't have even the proper foundation, so it had to be replaced anyway. And they want to enlarge this addition at the same time, because the house right now, it's only two small bedrooms, one bedroom facing the neighbor on the south, which is like a brick wall 2 feet away from the window. And there is only one very small and awkward bathroom in this house. So they want to take this opportunity to enlarge the bathroom and add another bedroom so the house can be more suitable for the family with children. That's it.
Mr. Chair, I propose that we accept this request again for variance. I don't see anything amiss with the request.
Yes, I'm on the line.
I don't think so.
Well, just to clarify, I'm the homeowner. I was listed as the agent, but I'm the homeowner. You know, we're just requesting to renovate the existing structure and have worked to minimize the variances, and happy to answer any questions.
Chair, I looked at this one. This is a fairly straightforward. It's very simple. It's a small, it's a large lot, it's a small house. It looks like they're just trying to maximize. There's no variances which seem excessive, so I'm prepared to move approval. And I don't believe there are any planning conditions, so without any conditions.
I'd second that.
Thank you. That's
yes, I am. Oh, it's okay. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Véronique Gerard-Buffet, and I'm the architect and agent for the owners of 38 Elmer. This property is located between Queen Street and Norway Avenue. We were engaged because the front entrance component of the house does have a fair amount of issues from a design envelope, mechanical, and ventilation perspective. So we discussed early on taking a very reserved approach given the prevalence of larger interventions in the area, and the goal was that our approach would not significantly alter the character of the existing house, which the owners are quite partial to. I think that we've accomplished that in the scheme we're proposing. What we're proposing is the demolition of an existing front entrance and deck, and the replacement in its place of a new front entrance space, which is essentially half the overall area of the previous. We believe variances proposed to be minor, given that most of these 1 to 4 reflect existing non-compliant conditions that we're bettering. So just, I don't know if it's any assistance to go through the variances quickly. The first reflects the FSI value. So again, this is an existing non-compliant condition. And with the proposed, we're actually reducing the overall floor space index from what it currently is. The existing single-story entrance is 13.3 meters that we'll be demolishing, and the proposed is 5.8 meters square. The second is regarding the front yard setback. The new entrance that we are proposing is in line exactly with the existing entrance, so we are intending to maintain the existing condition, mainly because we are already dealing with quite a tight space. The third variance calls up the setback of a platform without main walls, so essentially the front deck. Again, we're actually pulling back from the property line, so we've compressed the deck from what it previously was by nearly 0.5 meters. Again, we did our best to make this as tight as we could without preventing access to the front door. For variance 4, regarding the front yard landscaping, as Tina noted in her zoning certificate, the driveway was included in that calculation. Had it not been considered in the area, we'd be looking at approximately 67% soft landscaping, and that doesn't include the deck and the paver walkway. We have no objections to working with permeable pavers or looking at alternative solutions if that allows us to kind of push through. We've also, part of our consideration for reducing the entrance so significantly was that it did allow us to bring that landscaping number up by putting a planting bed next to the proposed driveway space. Finally, variance 5 is the parking space. So we have ensured that the pad is entirely within the owner's property and does not encroach whatsoever on the city's boulevard. Precedents in the area reflect others who've been successful in achieving the same. In closest proximity to us, we have 32, which was approved by committee to have the same condition. And most recently, just immediately north of us, 40 and 42 were approved to have a curb cut and front driveway condition. I just wanted to touch base on one of the objection letters noted, number 52, which did not get approved. And that when I did some research, that was because the pad was or did trigger transportation services issues because it was entirely on the city boulevard. Also, just to further demonstrate to committee that the streetscape we're dealing with is not, I guess, common when it comes to parking or off-street parking prevalence. We did conduct a survey, which we provided in our supporting documents, just to really demonstrate that we're dealing with a street which has essentially 86% of the houses with access to front off-street parking. Just for example, between Queen Street East and our subject property, there's only one house which does not have access to a curb cut condition. And then on the east side, there are only two houses between 37 and Queen Street East which do not have access to it. And then just two more points, just with regards to the a couple comments brought up in the objection letters for the trees on the subject property. We've done our due diligence. We've engaged with an arborist in anticipation of the requirement for a permit to injure. And we have every intention to take all the steps necessary to ensure that the tree is protected during the process. We've also spoken to Grant Winters in urban forestry, who's given us no indication that what we're proposing would really negatively impact both these trees. Regarding transportation services, we've also spoken to Rebecca O, the supervisor in transportation services, who noted that there was no requirement for us to have to go through her department, given that we are proposing a space entirely on our owner's property. And just sure. So we have a large amount of support with the 12, I believe it was 12 letters of support from neighboring properties, including the immediate neighbors to the south, which would have the closest proximity to the pad. They've even assisted our owners in garnering the signatures. So, and the two objection letters we did receive, I just want to note that those properties do actually have access to city boulevard parking pad conditions on their lot. So their objection has more to do with secondary vehicle accommodations versus their primary vehicles. I think that pretty much wraps up.
Okay, I'd like to ask a question that you have the support of number 40, but they also have asked that whether we can put a condition on that the front porch will not be enclosed and in the future. Is that okay with you?
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's no intention to do that. I know they've recently been approved for a proposal, and I think they're just trying to make sure we don't encroach further kind of towards the setback.
No, my question is that is it okay if we put that as a condition? I know that you're not encroaching it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Oh, so go ahead, Jim.
Oh, yeah, you can make a motion, but I also want to mention that there seems to be a lot of concerns about on-street parking. But I also noticed that even on the even number side, there are a lot of driveways, and also there are a lot of front yard parking already existing. So, and I was waiting for some opposition to comment on that, but since they're not here, I'm okay with the proposal as it is.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts. I actually looked up the addresses of those that are opposed, and I think the applicant made mention that those folks have parking pads themselves, which seems like an odd position to take when you're using it. I think the street is very characteristic of having parking pads. I did note that this one's on private property, so Transportation Services doesn't have any concerns. I thought the proposal itself was very thoughtful. I appreciated the suggestion from the applicant to put in permeable pavers, again, helping us deal with that issue. For all those reasons, I'm supportive of this application. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve. And I don't believe there are any conditions. Or you want to put that condition about not enclosing the future porch?
Isn't there a forestry #1 condition? Yeah.
Oh, forgive me. Yep, yeah. Forgive me, you're right.
Yeah, and the second condition, yes, the front porch will not be enclosed or have a roof structure.
Yeah, those two conditions, plus I put a condition in for permeable pavers.
Oh, yes. From the front, for the front.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, how are you? Yeah, it's as you described. Originally, we had drawn it as a 3-story, but then we saw the impact was a little too much, so we brought it down to a 2-story. And we feel that the variances are minor in nature and they meet the 4 tests. If you have any other questions, I'll be able to answer them.
Yes, I do have a question for variance number 6. Can you bring that up, please?
Yeah, that's
no, yes, my question, let me, okay. I get a little bit confused. That on your survey, both on your survey and your site plan, indicating that the lot width is 5.49 meter, but for some reason, on the variant number 6, it says 5.791 is wider than your lot. I do not understand that part.
Yeah, it must have been a typo on that part, but it's the width of the lot.
Yeah, but then we have to correct it if it's a typo.
The lot size is 5.49.
Yeah.
So that should be 5.49. You're correct. So it's less than what we are asking for. And that's in the laneway where the overhead garage door is. That's where the cars go into the garage. So
yeah,
we
have to base on the survey. Yeah, the survey also is indicating it's a narrower. Yeah, it's the smaller number.
Yeah. Well, we can change that number to 5.49. That's the correct number. Yeah, it should be 5.49.
I would like to make a motion for approval with number 6 as amended to 5.49 meter.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Hall. I am an architect with the Architect Builders Collaborative, and we're engaged by the owners of the property, Tim Sago, who is on the line in case you have questions of him, his wife, Beth DeWitt, and really I suppose the client for this project, which is a new 2-story laneway house, is Beth's mother, June Scott. June first approached me actually with the idea of could we build effectively, I guess, a retirement home for herself behind her daughter and son-in-law's property. And she's moving out of the house that she lives in on her own in North Toronto. We looked at the property, and the very first thing we said is there's this beautiful tree in the backyard, which everyone loves. And so as we do with a lot of our projects, we brought a professional arborist in, Wenda Lee from Elite Tree Care. And we really predicated our work around what can we do to preserve the tree. I trust you've read the extensive submissions. We have our set of plans. We have a cover letter explaining why we feel this meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And definitely some opposition from some of the neighbors that focuses on a number of issues, some of which are really objections to the idea of a laneway house on their block. I understand change is difficult, change happens. As you know, the City Council has widely endorsed this kind of development, both originally in 2018, again with the full current council in 2019 when they extended the bylaw across the city, and most recently in December 2020 when they made it easier to get approval for things like reducing some of the requirements for fire access. So this is clearly consistent with official plan and with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. We are here specifically today with 2 minor variances. One relates to soft landscaping and one to the setback from the lane. If you look at the site plan, I believe it's drawing number 3, you'll see there's an existing deck was built shortly after the owners purchased the property in 2017. Quite a lovely wood deck. If we were to remove the deck, which I put to the owner at the outset, we would not be asking for a variance on soft landscaping. We would have our 85% that we could do small paths. However, we didn't want to do that. So what we proposed instead was reducing the existing footprint. There is an existing 1-story building that fills the lot line to lot line, 0 setback from the lane. And that's important because we actually have a right to keep that building if we wished and convert it to a laneway suite. And again, it would be as of right, other than the 2nd floor, which would have to respect all the bylaws. Chose not to do that. It's not a great building. It's in dilapidated condition. It would cost a lot of money to do that. And the result would be, in fact, less soft landscaping than we're proposing, because we are opening up an area on the west side of the property, adding about another 15 square meters of soft landscaping there. And then in discussion with the planners, we proposed adding a green roof on the property and the building. Planning has asked that be a condition. We're very happy to accept that condition. With that green roof, we're actually exceeding over 90% soft landscaping, leaving the existing deck in place. The other concern was proximity to the lot line. We originally proposed building on the existing footprint, 0 lot line setback, as has historically been there for decades. Engineering raised concerns and said they would like the 1.5, I believe it's 2.5 from the lane center to allow for future widening of the lane. We agreed to that. We recessed and shrunk the building. And in fact, they also had a concern about how the door opened direct onto the laneway. So we agreed to move the door to its proposed location now on the west side. The tree, we've engaged a highly esteemed reputable arborist, Ms. Wenda Lee, formerly a supervisor with urban forestry, over 30 years experience. She loves trees as we do. We've come up with a plan in conjunction with a very good structural engineer to tread very, very lightly in the tree protection zone to ensure that there is no injury to this tree as a result of the construction. Ms. Lee's had discussions with urban forestry. They've given us the tentative thumbs up, I would say, pending receipt of the final permit application. As you know, they can't approve in advance without a permit in front of them. Notably, they have not asked for conditions on this project. They are comfortable with the way we're proceeding. So I feel we've done a lot to mitigate the concerns. The overarching concern the neighbors have raised, and I think they may be here to speak, is one of safety on the laneway was raised by 2 letter writers. We fail to see how adding living space compromises the safety. In fact, as Jane Jacobs would say, eyes on the street enhance public safety. Overlook and privacy, absolutely a concern. Likewise, a concern for June. The owners have said to me they have no issue with working around window locations facing the lane, using high clear story windows. You know, they want mutual privacy. They also don't want the neighbor staring into her living space. So we believe we can work collaboratively with the neighbors to come up with, address their concerns about privacy and overlook. Shading, I think, is spurious. There's a 60 to 70 foot tree there that casts far more shade than this building ever will. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I want to say, I believe we've done all the reasonable things to address the concerns raised by planning and engineering to speak to these variances. And the question about whether or not this will be the first 2-story laneway suite on the block, well, somebody has to be first. Council has approved it. Change is not always easy to accept, but it's been endorsed by the city and it's coming. So there's not much we can do about that aspect. I feel we've done our best to address the concerns. Thank you.
Just a quick one, if I might. The rear deck attached to the existing house, is it like a standard deck, wood deck, or is it covered?
No, it's open. It's quite beautiful, but it's an open wood deck at the level of the main floor of the house.
So it allows rainwater to go through.
It does indeed, and there is sand underneath. And I know our colleagues at the planning department still consider that hard landscaping and not soft. But from a perspective of stormwater retention, absolutely water can run through that deck and into the ground.
Yeah. So that's my point. It does mitigate the reduction in soft landscaping a little bit.
It does, and the green roof likewise does a similar effect as, holding back rainwater typically for 48 hours before it releases it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, it's just a clarification question. On your plans, when I add all the area, floor area together is 47.44 square meter. But on your site plan, you have said it's only 43.04. Which one is correct? The total area.
The site plan is coverage, I believe 4304.
It's only the coverage. Are you sure?
Yes, it is 8 meters by about 5.46. That's 43.04. That is coverage.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But anyhow, it does not. You do not have area variance, right?
No, we are far below the permitted 80 square meter footprint times 2 would be 160 square meters. We're, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Hello? Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, we at 27 CAVELL have been residents here for 40 years. When we initially purchased, there were many tall trees surrounding our house, both front and back. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't identify myself. I'm Renee Lockhart. Can I proceed? All right. So during have been residents here for 40 years. When we initially purchased, there were many. Yes, I hear a feedback. Both front and back. And through the years, many of those trees have died as a result of construction and disease. We have missed the sumac tree, which was on our property. I'm not sure what's happening to the audio here, but I am getting a lot of feedback. In any case, we had a sumac tree on our property which died when our neighbor dug in the pool. And since then, we have planted a replacement tree, a locust, which has also died last year as a result of being beside a pool and the beautiful silver maple at 31 CAVELL. So we have now lost 2 trees, and the only trees now, large trees facing the back of our property are, in fact, the tree at 31 CAVELL and one to the east. The arborist report suggested that there would be damage to the silver maple, and the application to injure and removal by 31 CAVELL has been recorded. So we cannot lose another large tree. This is our point. Well, I read the 25-page arborist report, and it is somewhat, I beg to differ. The large silver maple root system runs under the existing structure, which is not a building, it is a shack. It is a run-down, falling down 4-piece garage. However, the root system it is described in the arborist report, is in fact running under this. By cutting through into a basement structure, they will lose a major proportion of the root system. Our tree, the replacement tree, died because the silver maple root system, the drip line, is now directly into the center of our property, which is very narrow. So we have no illusions that this tree will not die as a result of the basement digging, no matter what they're trying to do, because of the magnitude, the breadth and width of the tree and its root system.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Wonderful. Well, thank you for providing me with a bit of time here. So my name is Daniel Welch. I live at 30 Strathcona Avenue, so one of the homes directly to the rear of 31 Cavell Avenue. Myself and my neighbor Adam will both be speaking today. We have written support of 23 residents from 15 houses on both Strathcona and Cavell in opposition to the laneway suite. And we are asking that these applications be refused. Within that group of neighbors objecting, all 6 houses on Strathcona immediately behind 31 Cavell to the east and to the west of the applications, as well as some of the surrounding neighbors on Cavell, are part of the document that we put forward as a group that you have in front of you. So I'm going to address a few of the issues that we see in terms of community opposition to the proposal. And from our perspective, this proposal is not in accordance with the intent or purpose of the Toronto official plan, stating that neighborhood development is intended to be sensitive and gradual with little visible change and with the neighborhood density and character staying intact. The office plan specifies that impacts by new development on light, shadowing, and privacy are to remain minimal. And so that's something that I'll speak to today. So first, addressing the structures, the proposed structure, it entirely changes the view and light supply for the homes and backyards directly to the rear and the backyards to the east and west. If the structure is built, as proposed, many of us will see morning and afternoon light blocked in some instances from coming into our kitchens and our backyards. And for many of us, these backyards have become sanctuaries during COVID of reprieve and isolation and recovery. We'll no longer be able to see, the same views, sky, trees, canopy from our windows on our main floor, and from other windows within our back home. So, I think from our perspective, instead of sunlight, skies, trees, and nature, we'll be looking at a 20-foot wall with 2 large windows within 15 feet of property lines and backyards, which is quite troubling. My property specifically, as well as my neighbors at 32 and 32, we don't have garages. We have small backyards with decks and patios and barbecues that are used, regularly throughout the year. These backyards are right in front of the wall. There's not much between us and the alleyway is quite narrow between these 2 properties. Additionally, number 34 Strathcona is a small backyard behind an A-frame garage, double decking off the back. They spend a lot of time out there as well. The owner of that home is actually concerned that the structure breaches her landlord and tenant agreement because the agreement states that the rental comes along with the quiet enjoyment of a private backyard. So from our perspective and my perspective, it doesn't feel like a minor variance. It does not feel like a gradual or sensitive change to the streetscape of the laneway. And this, will bring major impacts on the lives and enjoyments of the applicant's immediate neighbors, as well as those further down the laneway in both directions, specifically during construction of this structure. Furthermore, just sort of expanding on the streetscape we have here, 31 Cavell is one of the only, if not the only house in this neighborhood on a double lot, which is a very, significant anomaly on these streets. Our alley and neighborhood is really represented by small semi-detached homes, post-sized backyards, small single-car garage structures, And really, we feel like this two-story structure is going to stand out and really change the character of the laneway-scape and neighborhood, creating more of a claustrophobic feeling within the laneway, and really not representing a sensitive or gradual change. I think everyone has been through the variances here around the rear yard setback. That's significant for many of us in that it'll constrict the laneway further. The structure itself, as we sort of look at the setback itself, about 100 square feet of the proposed structure violates the setback bylaw. And although the existing structure is already in the exception of the street and every other modern garage has sort of abided by the setback law, we feel that approval of the variance would render the setback bylaw quite meaningless, as future laneway builds would follow precedent further down the alley and on nearby streets. So given that the alley is already narrow, there needs to be adequate places to move snow, allow large family cars to get through, children to play. It's posing challenges for many of us. And sort of finally, as per the engineering and construction services report submitted by the applicant, the minimum setback is to provide for an eventual future widening of the public lane to improve access to abutting properties. And we feel that violating this bylaw significantly is not a minor variance, since there's no precedent in the area for any 1- or 2-story laneway suites on an alley of this width, let alone one that violates the setback. So that's what I wanted to share. I believe my neighbor Adam is up next, and I yield the balance of my time.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. You can hear me okay? Yes, it's just me. Okay. My name's Adam Seidenberg. I live at 32 Strathcona, immediately behind the applicant at number 31 Cavell. The proposed 2-story laneway suite would also significantly violate the landscaping bylaw, requiring 85% softscaping between the back wall of the main structure and the front of the ancillary. The proposed 61% is 28 square meters or 300 square feet less softscaping than permitted by the official plan, and clearly not a minor variance. While they have proposed a green roof to mitigate the softscaping deficiency, considering that their own arborist reported that the tree right next to it would be injured with no guarantee of protection, the loss of the tree to the neighborhood more than negates the benefits of a green roof. The lot depths in the neighborhood do not allow for a building of this size, and any other proposed laneway suites would also have to violate the softscaping requirements to follow what would be another troubling precedent and render the landscaping bylaw meaningless. Contrary to the architect's assertion in his submitted correspondence and just now speaking, the 300 square foot deck is excluded by the city's definition of softscaping according to bylaw 569-2013. So of the proposed 463 square foot footprint, 100 square feet violates the setback bylaw, 300 square feet contravenes the softscaping bylaw, meaning that only 15% or 63 square feet of this proposed ancillary building complies with the bylaw requirements. This is clearly a major variance and does not maintain the general intent or purpose of the official plan. The applicants proposed 2 large second-story windows on the structure that face directly into our bedrooms. These windows are closer to the bedroom windows in our house than to the bedroom windows in theirs. The applicants have more bedroom privacy from this structure than we do. These windows not only peer into our bedrooms, but also down to the main floor and kitchens and our backyards. This is an audacious request to invade our privacy both inside and outside our homes. In their letter to the neighbors, they have stated that the plans will be within the other bylaws designed to protect the privacy of neighbors. However, there is no sign of them actually respecting the neighbor's privacy when placing windows at so close a distance that face directly into our bedrooms, kitchens, and backyards. The structure does not fit the nature of what the city clearly intended with laneway suites. The depiction of the city's changing lane website shows ample spacing and privacy, with the laneway house facing back on an enclosed garage, followed by 2 large trees and then more lawn before it approaches the neighbor's house. In this situation, you'd be replacing a garage with our open backyards and replacing 2 large trees with our kitchen and bedroom windows. While I wish I had the space and trees and privacy of the property on the city's website, I do not. My house is right there. My neighbor's house is right there. This is completely intrusive and can't possibly be what the city intended when it began allowing laneway suites in 2019. Building a 2-story laneway suite in this location would set a worrisome precedent for homeowners in this neighborhood, also as their privacy would be equally at risk. All this is made worse as during COVID, our backyards are being used as safe family spaces more than ever. The only examples of laneway houses anywhere in the neighborhood are where there are deeper lots on the north side of the Danforth that look exactly like the image on the city's website. While areas north and west of us can handle these types of innovative structures, our small lot neighborhood cannot. There is no precedent anywhere in the neighborhood of windows being placed at the very back of a lot facing directly into their neighbors' bedrooms, kitchens, and windows, as the applicant proposes. There's also an entrance off the alley. Our feeling of safety and security would not be the same if this were to become an Airbnb, practically right in our backyards, as could certainly happen in the future, either by the applicants or by future owners, bringing transient alley traffic. The applicants stated in their letter to the neighbors that the purpose of the proposed dwelling was to allow their mother to age in place when the time comes. They went on to say that she'll remain living in her home in North Toronto and only use the laneway suite when visiting the city. As she's clearly well enough to travel to Toronto and visit and continue to live independently on her own, there's no pressing or urgent need demonstrated. Furthermore, the original builder of this home informed us that there's a separate side door entrance leading to a large basement bedroom suite should their mother need a place to stay. So then what is the need for this now? It has greatly concerned us as neighbors that the applicants call this a need when it clearly is not, while simultaneously infringing on the basic needs of so many of their fellow neighbors. Laneway suites are a good idea, and we are in support of them in certain places, but the key is that they are developed in such a way as to not have detrimental impacts on privacy, livability, or neighborhood form. There has been no collaboration whatsoever with their neighbors at all. I trust that the committee is judicious in where this new concept fits and where it does not, considering the overwhelming opposition and that this doesn't meet the 4 tests. We strongly oppose the construction and request variances and request that these applications be refused. Thank you. I yield the balance of my time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there were 3 speakers. I will try to speak briefly to which they commented on. The initial concern about the tree, I think the plan in the arborist plan on page 6 clearly shows that the basement is not within the tree protection zone, nor the roots. This is in fact the strategy to avoid. You'll see the base, yeah, on page 6, you'll see the basement on the right of the plan. You'll see clearly indicated the 3 locations for helical piles that are flexible. And on pages 7 and 8 following, a very detailed plan of work prescribed by the arborist that includes what's called an air spade excavation, where they remove dirt by air, not by digging to not damage roots, and full supervision of the excavation by the professional arborist. This is the gold standard of working in proximity to trees. In terms of some of the other comments, there is a suggestion made that somehow the city's laneway housing bylaw violates its own official plan. As you know, the planning department did extensive work, provided numerous reports, volumes of them to council. There was extensive public consultation that went into this, and it is being an official plan amendment. Laneway houses are permitted by the official plan. They are permitted as of right in an R zone. That is not in question. There were numerous discussions at those public consultations by people similarly stating we agree with it in principle and not on our laneway. Clearly, someone goes first. This bylaw has only been around for 2 years. I think only 7 laneway houses have been completed in Toronto as of the last data I had from the city. There will always be someone first. There will always be change. Some people have been there 20, 30, 40, 50 years, as they said. We realize this is a difference. The existing, the suggestion that we are somehow blocking sight lines. I put it that the 60-foot high tree is visible when you have a 20-foot building in front of it. The main question around windows, we said certainly plans at this stage are never final. Windows can be adjusted. We would be very happy to adjust and accommodate that. Like we said, nobody wants invasion of privacy from either side. The last comment, there was an implication that somehow this might be an Airbnb. As the committee is aware, the city has bylaws around short-term rentals. Laneway houses are not allowed to be used as an Airbnb. We trust that the city, with vigilant neighbors nearby, will enforce that. I think that is a spurious accusation, and that the real core of this matter is that the neighbors who live immediately behind do not wish to see this kind of building behind them. I understand that nobody likes to see new buildings beside them, but smart infill growth, this kind of gentle intensification, has been permitted by council is consistent with the official plan and the zoning bylaw. We contend the variances are minor. The soft landscaping, I think we spoke to at length. The numbers being tossed around are a bit disingenuous. There is ample soft landscaping on this property. And there was a suggestion that somehow, because it's the widest property on the block, that somehow it's the least appropriate for a laneway house. I think most people would argue the opposite. The larger the property can actually support this kind of development better than other properties. We trust that you will find that most of the objections are actually opposed to the notion of a two-story laneway house, which in fact is an as of right condition on this lane. Thank you.
We can have a little discussion. I agree with the applicant. It's actually a lot of concerns to do with not having a laneway, two-story laneway house at all. Okay, I'm speaking now. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I just want to add a comment that there are two variances in front of us, and the lack of soft landscape is the planning staff is putting on a condition of having a green roof to compensate that. And I'm okay with that. And also I agree with the applicants. Most of the concerns in the neighborhood is just about not having a two-story laneway house. It's got very little to do with the variances that in front of us. Secondly, that's about sunlight, and I agree that the position of the house, the sun, especially the afternoon sun, is actually mostly blocked by the tree. I'm not too sure how they will lose sunlight in the afternoon with the structure. So I'm in support of the condition, with the proposal, with the staff condition that the green roof will be part of the condition.
I'll just weigh in. I agree with everything that Yim said. My observation is, first of all, acknowledge all the speakers and those that raise concerns. We appreciate and understand and heard those concerns. But this application is most close to as of right as you can. Side. The concerns from the residents are about trees, which I think we heard from the arborist or the arborist report that can be mitigated, and just simply the concern about having the first laneway suite in this area. And I agree with Yim. This is council has approved this. Council is supporting and encouraging these kinds of structures in areas throughout the city, and I think this is the kind of development, frankly, in that context that we should be supporting. And similarly, I support this application. Yeah, sure. I'll make a motion to approve this application. I think subject to planning's condition about the green roof, I think there's engineering conditions and an urban forestry condition number 2. The standard engineering conditions for laneway suites, I believe.
I don't have that either. I think the condition is to put a green roof on it for the staff. Yeah, but what they have to do is to apply for a forestry permit or something.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm looking at my handwritten notes, and Chair, you'll appreciate the messiness of my handwriting, and it's I misread it. That's correct. Bram, are you there? Was it happening before or just recently? Yeah, so I think I'm having difficulty. I normally wear my ear pods and they just expired, so I just plugged in my earphones, and I think it's the fact that I'm using these kind of earphones. So as soon as I charge back up again, I'll go back to the original approach.
Hello? Yes, sir. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned, the application before you is to take this one-story storage building and convert it into a single-family dwelling. We've been working with planning over the last couple of years as what to do with this property. We do recognize the kind of abnormalities around this kind of building behind a building. This property was probably severed off at one point in time, so it's located in the rear yard with the direct access from the driveway to the street. Working with planning, they recommended that they like to see residential. We did. We didn't even look at multiple residential, so it is, in fact, just a single-family dwelling. To achieve this, we have 6 variances, as you see. 3 of the variances are really just dealing with the existing situations. Variance 1, the driveway width, that's the existing driveway. Variances 5 and 6 are dealing with soft landscaping. Again, existing situation. We're not even touching the ground on this proposal. We're just going straight up on the existing building. There is a floor space index, 74% time in a 60% zone. We think that's pretty minor, pretty typical for any type of development anywhere in Toronto. And the variances 3 and 4. Number 3 is relating to the cladding. What we're proposing on the south side of the building, we have an exterior terrace that faces the park. We're looking to do some sort of trellis system that will kind of has the ability to grow ivy, kind of a green wall to sort of soften that terrace, which will be up on the 3rd floor. So when that kind of projects off the building, again, just the proximity of the building to the property lines, it does create a variance. But again, facing the park, I don't think there's any negative effects to anybody on that south side. The last variance I would like to speak to is the height. So the description is mentioning that we're building a 2nd and 3rd floor additions, but really it's a 2-story building. The height of the 2-story building is just over 8 meters. And what we're proposing, there's no amenity space. We have no backyard. So the 3rd floor, 2nd floor roof would be the amenity space, thus the 3rd floor terrace. And then to access that, we have a little pop-up kind of in the northeast corner. That stair tower, which is just going to house a little 2-piece washroom as well, that is what's triggering the height variance in that one corner. So all in all, we worked with planning quite closely to kind of get something that they can support, thus the report in the file that they do like it. And we try to recognize, knowing the setbacks, you know, and the height, the main massing of the house, as I mentioned, is about 8.5 meters, you know, plus that stair tower. To try and help mitigate any overlook, we limited the windows, and the shadowing is also taken care of as well by trying to keep the proposal about 1 meter under what is allowed for wall height. If I can get the 3rd floor plan up, you can see it. It's a stair. There's a little 2-piece washroom, and there's a little servery up in that spot as well. Mainly because, as you can see, the 3rd floor terrace, that's kind of the amenity space. So it just allows a little kitchenette, I guess, bar fridge, wine fridge, and that's it. And I guess a little storage area as well, just for a place to put the outdoor furniture in the event of inclement weather.
Just a quick one, if I might share. Memory serves, we did something, we dealt with 404 Salem, some variances in respect to that building. And I wonder, to the applicant, the driveway, is there an easement on that driveway to get access to this new build?
No, the driveway is part of our property. The application you're speaking to, we were at a committee maybe last year to build a new single-family dwelling at 404.
Right.
And what we did is we created an easement over this driveway in favor of 404 for limiting distance for windows and glazing, and also to allow the occupants of number 404 to drive over our driveway to access their new garage. So the driveway that on the application is it's all our property.
Right. Okay.
Yes, hi, I'm Paul Santinos. I'm the owner of 406. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm the owner of 406, which is directly beside the proposed garage. And I would lose all my sunlight in my backyard when you increase it. And not to mention, there's also a tree there, which would be affected, as well as my privacy. With windows. In my house, I have no windows on either side. I have windows in the back and windows in the front. That's it. And what you're proposing now is to build on the back, which was literally a storage, and you're converting it into a family home, which is fine, but with the height and everything, it'll just peel off my backyard. Half of my backyard's already all shade anyway, because the sun comes on the south side, and that storage blocks most of the sun into my backyard already. And there's also a large tree right here on the northwest corner of my property, which is a very large tree. And it overhangs like this whole property. So I don't know if you can see that, but right there's a huge tree. It's a planter elm, which overhangs like half of this. It kind of goes all around here. Okay, I don't know how to do that, but it's on the northeast corner where that hand is right now. Yeah, there's a huge planter tree which goes into 408. It covers my whole backyard. It covers half of 402's roof. It covers the other side on Bartlett as well. Yeah, that whole area is covered with a huge tree. Anyway. That's a good question. I'm sure the roots go under. You're going to have to cut part of that tree to build this higher. Because right now the tree almost touches the roof that's there now. You're going to build it high, you're going to have to cut it. And then you're going to create shade all over my backyard, and I'll have no privacy with windows. No.
Yeah, just like I mentioned before, we worked quite closely with planning to try and mitigate as many of these issues as we possibly could. So that is why we just went up to 1 story. So we're just putting a 2nd floor on top of it, and plus that pop up the stair tower. It was purposely put in that northeast corner of the building, so as the sun comes across the sky, the afternoon sun would kind of make its way as best it can into the neighboring properties. So that was done on purpose. Regarding the trees, this will be subject to urban forestry. I don't think we're going to kill any trees because, again, we're not digging, we're not excavating, we're just going straight up on the existing structure. So that will just be any sort of normal pruning application as need be to kind of pick up some of the large overhanging branches. Very typical, whether it's development or not, people don't like these large branches that loom over their houses in the event of a heavy rainstorm or windstorm could fall down. So general tree maintenance and pruning is always recommended, and I'm sure that's exactly what would happen here. And furthermore, if that tree is as large as the neighbor is saying, I would suspect that in the summer that a good bulk of the shading is probably coming from the trees. You can see in the photographs, I took it in the winter, you can see the skeletons of the trees, but I don't have any summer shots to kind of show you the full foliage of this area. So I don't think the shadowing is as dramatic as it sounds. I will point out that this neighborhood has a wide range of housing, close setbacks. In the photographs I've submitted, I don't know if I can get those on the screen. But if you look at photograph C, this is directly across the street. We see some residential houses right next to a 3-story commercial building. You know, I guess something similar is happening to ours. Very close setbacks. Our height is nowhere near that. Even our property, photograph B, that's 404, 406. Again, very close. Number 406, his house goes fairly deep. So, you know, that type of situation is present. Even in the direct backyard, it's kind of another anomaly. Maybe the map that you, as part of the community adjustment, would better show that. But there's 2 properties that have their backyards severed off, and there's 2 situations where there's house behind houses. So the overlook and the fact that there's a neighboring house right on the backyard, again, is kind of an existing situation. It's in the neighborhood. Am I able to get the map up on the screen? I guess it would be yes. So if we zoom in there, see number 313A, 311, those are backyard severances, and you can see that those are not like laneway houses. Those are actually 2-story homes that are right on the rear property lines. And if you want to put my photographs back up, you can see them there. Can I? No, I was just trying to qualify it, Mr. Chair. It is a 3-story because there is a 3rd story, but the bulk of the 3rd story is really just the stair tower and that little pop-up. So the overall massing is 8.5, but when you know, to the top of everything, yes, we're getting the height variance because it's not a full 3rd floor. I guess might be a better term for that. It's only like 25% of that 3rd floor would be a 3rd floor. Yes, it's on the northeast corner, so it is on that same side. So there's no windows up on that 3rd floor. The windows that he's referring to are on the 2nd floor, and they're kind of small clear story windows. So if I can get the north elevation, you can see, yeah, there's the 2 windows there. Those are just really ventilation and light as a requirement of the OBC for bedrooms. And if we continue, there's the windows there. So not excessively large windows, just small clear story high windows to kind of mitigate any overlook, but really just for ventilation and some daylight. That's correct. Our 3rd floor terrace is on the south side of the building. So there's the massing of that 3rd floor pop-up blocks any view north, and there's 0 overlook onto the neighbor's property from that terrace.
I'll start, Chair. I thought the proposal, it's a unique parcel of land to start with, quite unusual. And this goes back to application that we heard last year about the adjoining property. I don't have any difficulties. I acknowledge the neighbor's concern, but I think that the applicant has done a really good job of trying to mitigate the impact on the neighborhood, and both by the height and the windows on the side that the neighbor lives on. I thought the proposal was quite reasonable given the context of the area. I thought the variances in general are minor. And as a result, I think I'm prepared to support this application. I'm happy to make a motion unless my colleagues have any concerns.
No, I just want to add some comment. Yeah, I agree with what Larry says. I think it's a great improvement of the current building, except that I wish the second floor and the third floor will be flipped on the south, so that it sort of give a little bit more room to the neighbor on the north. I can see that they're concerned because it's really like a box in their backyard. But on the other hand, I think that is a reasonable development. I'm in support, but that's a forestry number 2 condition. Larry.
Yeah, so I'll move a motion to, is it here unless you had any concerns?
No concerns, just a comment, and I think your point was well taken. It's a very unique situation. If it's a garage that's either currently being used or not being used, a mechanical garage, I assume, I think this is a very creative solution to an unusual situation. And apart from the forestry condition, there doesn't seem to be any other concerns. I appreciate the neighbors' concern, but I think the fact that the terrace is facing the other side makes it quite a reasonable solution to it. So I'm quite happy with this, supporting this application.
So, Chair, I'll move a motion to approve, subject to urban forestry condition number 2.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, no problem. So, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Luke Skokomo from Show Engineering. I'm representing the homeowner for this application, presenting to Committee of Adjustment. We were putting together a set of drawings that basically consist of a new rear detached garage and the reconstruction of the south wall on the main dwelling. After we put together a set of drawings that was in compliance to what the homeowner's needs were, we sent it into Committee of Adjustment. And now, after the public hearing notice was sent out, there was concerns with neighbors and the planning departments. The main concerns being the actual garage height, the rear detached garage height, and the landscaping variance that was being proposed. So the homeowner and we discussed on what can we do to mitigate the concerns, and decided to remove the actual landscaping variance that we were proposing and reduce the actual garage height from the 7 meters that we're asking for down to 4.5 meters. Zoning prescribes that we comply with 4 meters. So after we did the revision, we feel that we have worked with planning's concerns on this application, and worked as much as we could with the actual neighbors who were expressing issues with what we're initially proposing. Right now we have the homeowner online as well, if you have any questions for him or myself. Thank you. Yes.
While we're waiting, Chair, can we just confirm, so is the landscaping variance still in play, or did I hear the applicants say they don't need that any longer?
Hello?
It's deleted. Okay, thank you.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Are you speaking now about the 233? Yes, and so you have our opposition to some of the 4 variances. I think that's the correct term. Pardon me? No, this is the phone just rang, and we are just now connected to you. Thank you. Variance number 1. Variance number 1. Is this you mean a minimum of 25%? They're going to stay with the 25%. Very good, thank you. Yes. So it's going to be only as high as 4.5 now. Forgive me if I repeat what you say. I just want to confirm that I've heard you properly. So it's going to be 4.5 meters instead of the 7, which they asked for. Good, thank you, thank you. And the third? So number 3, they are going to get the 48.12 meters square instead of the 40.0? Well, where will they get that extra 8 meters if they're not going to if they're going to stay with the 25% of the rear yard? Where do the 8 meters come from? Yes, well, I mean, there seems to be a contradiction between those two. And what about number 4, please? A minimum required side yard setback of 0.9 meters? It's going to stay like that? At 0.0? Okay, now we need to know where the lot line is, and I think we requested that in our first email. How do we know where 0.0 is? That we already see an overhang. You know that the little building has been built. It's been already redone. It's there already. And there is an overhang that we think is hanging over our property at the back. Based on what? How can you authorize a variance to the extent that it might be encroaching on the neighbor's property? So, yeah, and you don't know where the lot line is. So tell me, please, what we have to do now to, does this mean we have to get a lawyer, that the city doesn't, in fact, say where the lot lines are to be in the deeds? Okay. Yes. Okay, and my submission will have to be from the point of view of a lawyer's, I guess, eh? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Now, what I don't understand is if our neighbors are just getting this done when the building has already been constructed, how can that be? I thought we had to, as he was doing with the garage, you know, asking. But it's already constructed, the mud house or the attachment to the proper main building. How did that get by? How was that accepted? All right. Well, then I'm saying very clearly here that for number 4, with the 0.9 or 0.0, that building is already constructed. So he's asking for something that we believe he should have asked for before extending what was there. And he has extended it and completed it to the point that we think, well, we don't know where the lot line is. We could be on the wrong side of it for that matter, but we really don't know. And we don't understand why it's being allowed after the fact. So, okay, forgive me. I've been involved in this for too long. Oh, so what is the next step then? You still have to look at all of these things as to, yes. Yes? Thank you very much. That's all I needed to know. Thank you. And it's 311 the city, yes. Well, we'll do that. Thank you very much. And we'll what you decide on all of these, we'll receive notification of the actual decision. Will we? Okay. And an email request to the same one as we've been using all along, CAO something TEY? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Great. Yes, I am now aware. So my opposition was to the 7-meter garage. So 4.5 meters is fine with me. So I no longer have opposition to that.
No,
okay,
nor do we.
Yes. Yes, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So, yeah, the mudroom that she's talking about, it is built, it's already finished. It's already constructed property. So we ended up receiving building permits back in September of 2019, and the initial building permits were to do substantial interior alterations to rework the interior layouts. While they were working in the rear mudroom, that's of concern with the neighbor on 231 Dovercourt, they realized that there was something building up. They got a test done and there was mold within the wall. So they took down the wall and rebuilt it so they can properly insulate it to prevent any moisture buildup within the actual structure. After it was rebuilt, the inspector requested that we get this checked out by zoning, by the zoning examiner. Zoning examiner flagged it as a zoning item because we're reconstructing a lawfully existing wall. Then we decided that we have to go to community adjustment to basically request to allow us to continue reconstructing the wall. It's already done, yes, but that was there and it was built as the way it is based on how the homeowner purchased the property back in 2010. Yes, Mr. Chair. No, we were just rebuilding up. We were rebuilding the roof that was in that area because the whole wall had mold in it. No, the garage stays the same. The reason why we chose that specific area, one, because it was the owner's request, and two, we took a look at the previous auxiliary structure areas that were previously approved at committee within the area. So within a 2 to 3 block radius. And property address like 24 Beaconsfield Avenue was approved at 85 square meters. 124 Agro Streets. Well, they were approved of a higher auxiliary structure heights. 98. Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. We were initially on the initial application. We actually had a parking pad located in the green space. So we removed the parking pad, which allowed us to delete the landscaping variance. The parking pad was considered hardscape at that point. So once we removed it, we complied with the landscaping variance. Yes. No problem.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure the garage is not built yet, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. I would like to make a comment and then I can have a motion. My concerns actually being addressed by the planning department. In the first place, I think 7 meters was just excessive. And I'm happy with the amendment, and I think it is quite make the whole thing reasonable, and I will move it for approval with as amended. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I am online. Can you hear me? Sure. So I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. So my name is Dominic Matusik. I'm a planner at the W&D Associates representing the applicant. Yeah, sure. Can you hear me better? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, these are. I mean, the property was a single-family bungalow. It was replaced. It was approved a little while back for 2 semi-detached houses, and now basically the owner is going for this one variance to allow for 2 small secondary suites, one in the basement of each of the semi-detached houses. The secondary suites are permitted as of right in the R zone, so the only variance that is being requested at this time is to permit a deficiency of 1 on-site parking space. A total of 3 parking spaces are required, and 2 are being provided in the rear yard, which are accessed through an easement that is access off of the existing public laneway to the east of the building. Yep. Thank you.
There's a request by the transportation to restore the old driveway to be soft landscape. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
we have no issue with that.
Okay. So in that case,
So just before you go, just want to acknowledge that there were several letters of opposition to this one. I take it we have no speakers. Okay. And the opposition, I just wanted to go back before you do, I'm sorry for interrupting. Just wanted to go back to the applicant. The letters of opposition seem to be in relation to parking. So you've already spoken to parking. Is there anything else you need to add in respect or response to that?
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's a variance of 1 space, which we think is reasonable, kind of given the fact these are 2 very small bachelor units. Each of them are under 400 square feet. The site is just a 10-minute walk from the online subway station. It has excellent transit accessibility, so I think it's highly likely that any future occupants of these units will likely not own cars. So I think, kind of given these factors, I think it's reasonable to say that, you know, a deficiency of 1 on-site parking space is probably going to have minimal to no impact on the availability of street parking. I also wanted to note that in bylaw 569/2013, a maximum of only 2 parking spaces are permitted in the rear yard. So even if a 3rd space were provided, we would have to get a variance for that. So it really was one or the other. And basically, Luna decided that it would be preferable to have the 2 spaces to limit traffic in the laneway, which was out of deference to my understanding discussion with the adjacent neighbors.
Yep, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had seen those letters. Thank you very much.
I have a motion for, okay. I move a motion for approval. And also with putting the transportation recommendation to restore the old driveway to be soft landscape.
Hi, yes, my name is Mike De Oliveira. I'm here representing 67 Rose Park Drive.
Yep.
No, I just think I need to state my name. So my name is Mike Oliveira. I'm here representing 67 Rose Park Drive, and I'm with Replacement Design located at 911 Davenport Road. I think the application is pretty straightforward here. As you said, the committee doesn't seem to need any presentation, so I think we're ready to move forward.
I move, Mr. Chair, that we accept the proposal or application as is. It's fairly straightforward.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Okay, do you want me to address the letter from 173 South Kingsway or the proposed? That I saw the letter on the website, and I'm not sure what I'm assuming the homeowners are talking about. Can you hear me? Now, I'm not sure what that letter is referring to. I visited the site and I haven't seen any reference to any large sinkholes or anything of that nature. And I would assume the engineering department, City of Toronto, would have background information on that. And if it was a concern, we would have seen that in a staff report.
Yeah, I like to move for approval, and I want to also address the letter of concern. He's mainly concerned about flooding and the water and that. I think they still have to apply for a building permit, which in that during the process they will address all this anyway. So I think that is a straightforward proposal. I will move for approval.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Great. Of course. Just before I start, I have sent in letters of approval from the two neighbors on either side, along with 27 other people within the immediate neighborhood. I have forwarded those to Jacob Cockerell. Unfortunately, they may have arrived a little bit too late. I'm just wondering if you have access to them. I have sent them to Jacob, and I have them right here. I have the phone number of one of the neighbors next door. We have been trying to get approval from the neighbors for some time now, but due to Christmas and other issues with the neighbors, we weren't able to actually get a sign-off from them. But we actually do have those sign-offs now, and I have proof of them in front of me. I also have... Okay. Okay, so currently the existing two-story home is divided into 3 separate units. Our proposal is to add a 3rd story to this house and convert the entire house into a single-family home. We have spoken to neighbors on either side, and we have come to an agreement where we will reduce the height of this house from the 10.96 to 10.66. So we reduce the size or the height of the house to 10.66 through a reduction of 12 inches or 0.3 of a meter. That would be variance number correct, and then that would also alter variance number 6 as well, permitted. Okay. That is correct. So number 6 would also reduce in height because we reduce the height of the building by down to 10.3 meters as opposed to 10.5 meters. Yes, there's item 1, 2, and 3, which have to do the front yard walkout and the rebuild of the existing front porch. We've eliminated those items from the variances, so nothing will change there. The front, correct. And item 4 will remain as is, which is so item 4 calls for a maximum FSI of 1 times, and we are at 1.11 times, which is very minor in nature. That is correct. No direct complaints regarding the FSI. I mean, people don't like change. Their major concern actually had to do with the height of the building. So we've addressed that with the neighbors to the east and the neighbors to the west, as well as we've discussed this and received neighbors across the road.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose that we approve the application with all the amended changes that have been indicated.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.